In this video, we're going to be talking about a day in the life of a professional baseball player. Whether you're dreaming of going pro or maybe you're just curious on what a pro baseball player's day looks like, this video is going to give you a full rundown of the early mornings and late night games, and even those intense travel days. Pro baseball is not what you just see on the field. It's a lifestyle, it's a routine, and it's a commitment to excellence every single day. So let's break it down. Before we get started, if you guys are new here, my name is Evan Mendoza, and I have 7 years of professional baseball experience under my belt between the St. Louis Cardinals and the San Diego Padres for 1 year. So now, let's get into this video. Let's start talking about spring training, which is kind of where the season ultimately begins, right? So this is where we really develop an early morning routine for whatever reason. Sometimes it doesn't really make sense, but spring training is kind of the complete opposite schedule of what your typical day looks like during the season. So, the day starts out pretty early. I would say really early most times. And, especially in spring training, you just start to go to bed at like 7, 8 o'clock at night sometimes because you're really just trying to recover and get your 8 hours in, right? A typical morning for me, typically like start around 6, 7 a.m. Most days probably in between there, maybe a 6:30 alarm. And this is the time where I focus on getting my body and also my mind ready for the day ahead, because spring training is somewhat stressful, especially if you're not a top dog in the MLB that already has their position taken care of. They're already under contract and things like that. So I was never a player like that. So I always wanted to be sharp. I always wanted to be, prepared for my opportunity. So I usually arrive to the stadium, let's say like around 6:30, maybe a little bit later, just depending on where my alarm was. So I would give myself plenty of time ultimately to get settled in and also start my pregame routine or my pre-practice routine, really. And this is where spring training, obviously, depending if you're in big league spring training or minor league spring training, sometimes you'll try grabbing breakfast on the way there, because minor league spring training breakfast is kind of the worst. If you're in big league camp like I was for a couple of years, it is actually really solid food. It usually has a ton of, the only thing I really remember is an omelet station, made to order, completely custom, which is awesome. But, I'm a coffee guy, so I always wanted to make sure to get my breakfast in me, coffee, and all that type of stuff. And nutrition is key at this level. And these are the small separators that pro baseball players ultimately think about to make themselves that one fraction of a percentage better. All right. So I always made sure to fuel up with, a balanced meal that ultimately includes a protein, a carb, and a color. And if you guys don't know what that is, a protein is like a steak, a chicken, eggs, anything that is high and dense in protein. Carb, that's like a potato, a sweet potato. French fries even are a carb. They're not necessarily the healthiest option, but carb's going to give us that energy. And then the color, that's like green beans, that's broccoli, that's, carrots, any type of color that you can get on the plate. All right, so maybe I'll add in some fruits as well, especially in breakfast. That's just a great way to start off the day and get some natural sugars in. And, getting the right nutrients in the morning sets the tone for the entire day. It truly does. So after breakfast, it's time to get some light stretching in, and this is where we got our mobility work or our correctives. For those that don't know, our correctives are basically a way to make sure that we're correcting our body to ensure that we are flexible, we are working at the things that we need to get corrected, all right? So this is all about getting the body loose and ready for the physical demands of the day. Spring training, you are on your feet a lot, especially in spikes, and this is where your feet start to hurt, your calves start to hurt, your hamstrings start getting tight, your lower back gets tight. And then sooner or later, you're like, whoa, I've got 5 or 6 more months of this. We need to be taking care of our bodies, right? So that's one of the physical demands of the game. So in pro ball, staying healthy is everything. So it's important to address any nagging issues right away. And I can't stress this enough, guys, especially if you're in high school or college and you have dreams of playing at the next level. You need to make sure that you're addressing those nagging pains sooner rather than later. And this could mean, getting any type of treatment. As you can see in this picture, that individual is getting cupped. That's a very, common way of, dealing with soreness or any type of, pains. Also, getting any type of like rehab exercises in. So, I broke my wrist a couple of times. I pulled my adductor. Obviously making sure that we're taking care of those areas during our corrective routines as the first thing that we do basically throughout the day. we're really just making sure that everything feels right before we start, right? So sometimes it's also some visualization or some mental preparation that we can do during this time before our official stretch has begun. So as you can tell, we've already done our primary stretching for us, but then there's going to be a team dynamic as far as like a dynamic stretch as well before we get onto the field. So focusing basically on what I want to achieve in that day, that's what I'm going to be thinking about in that visualization process. So whether it's hitting, fielding cleanly, or just basically staying sharp on the base path, these are all things that I like to think through. And, sometimes it's small group work that we'll do before our official start of, stretch, which typically speaking would be around like 10 a.m. So obviously if you're getting to the ballpark at like 7 a.m., you have about 3 hours to eat breakfast, change, drink your coffee, get your correctives in, maybe do any type of, contrast, hot tub, cold tub, any type of stretching that you need to do, small group work, getting some cage work in potentially. And then sometimes we'll have like designated bunting times. And it sounds kind of weird, but like you just want to make sure that you're working on those small things as a professional. You never know when they're going to come up. So next, it's basically onto the practice field. This is where the team is going to be working up, warming up. Like you can kind of see in that picture, we have all of our lines. We have our, our stretches, our, karaoke, all A skip, B skip, whatever. And that's our dynamic warm up as a team. And this usually is, some agility drills as well. And also some light throwing to get the arm loose. All right. Then we move into more specific drills depending on that day's focus. It could be some team defense. It could be some fundamentals. It could be some hitting drills, situational plays, bunt D, first and thirds, rundowns, a million different things, right? Cutoffs and relays. These are all the things that we like to refresh our skills on, especially in spring training. And this is where, we have some practice plans set in stone, and it's our job to read the board and to understand what we have for that day. And then we move on to the game prep, which is basically like a ball talk, which after the warm up and after our like team practice, which is usually like an hour and a half maybe before the game starts. This is basically when we're able to, really start to focus on what the game's all going to be about. So this is where the real work happens. And, a typical practice might include, like I said, the cutoffs and relays and, batting practice, live BPs. And this is where, a lot of the game specific preparation comes in, like the defense, the ball talk. This is basically where we review who we're going to face for that specific game coming up later that day. Usually spring training games start at 1 o'clock, so we have a good understanding of like who we're going to face, how many at-bats we're going to face off of them, and we just have like a good understanding of how we're going to approach that day. This is also where we're, strategizing for the night's game. Maybe we'll be told also like when we're going to come in, if we're a backup and things like that. So little details like this really matter when we're competing at the highest level, right? So lunch, to be honest with you, is around 11:30, maybe 90 minutes before game time. And this is, a break after our team practice, maybe after ball talk, and before our official, like, getting prepared for the game. So this is also another opportunity to make sure we're refueling and also recharging before the game with some nutrients, hydrating the right way, keeping our energy levels at where we want them to be. Because obviously there's going to be times in spring training where it's very, very hot, whether you're in the Cactus League or the Grapefruit League in Florida. And this is going to be a really, really important time to get your, hydration on. So now game time, roughly around 1 o'clock, right? So it's time to start getting into that game mode. The hours leading up to the game are all about just like mentally preparing, physically preparing so that you can perform at your best. And obviously the training room is usually dedicated to the, leaders on the team, the veterans. A rookie is not necessarily going to go into the training room and be like, hey, I have something nagging. And these are all the dynamics of professional baseball that you don't really know until you experience, all right? So I usually start with some more focused drills on batting practice, really just depending on the day. But really go to the clubhouse for, final preparation, get your mind right, putting on the uniform, obviously, any type of like last minute game plans with the team. Game time, like I said, it's usually around 1 o'clock, and this is what it all ultimately builds up to. So this is the moment where all that hard work and preparation ultimately pays off. And as a guy like me, where I was like a AAA guy for most of my career, a lot of the times it was, sitting on the bench for 4 or 5 innings, and then I was brought into the game. So we get built up, and then we watch a couple of innings of the game, and then we're either tapped on the shoulder saying, hey, you're going to come in, on this game or for this guy, or to pinch run or to pinch hit or just to replace the guy on defense. And for me, I was actually backing up Paul Goldschmidt a lot when I was with the Cardinals at first base, so it was really, really cool. So the game itself is intense for a guy like me, but for a guy like Paul Goldschmidt, it's a little bit more laid back because, he gets to have fun with it, right? This is what we ultimately live for as pro athletes. We get to play in front of the fans. It's really a good atmosphere. You can just hear the buzz of the crowd, and this is all what we love to do. So after the game, it's not over yet, and this is where we really cool down in our routine, which really might include, stretching, ice baths, rolling out, whatever is really necessary to recover for the next day. And this is where the recovery process really starts. And we also review the game, so both individually and as a team for the next day during ball talk, to learn basically what happened and prepare for the next one. And this is something that I continuously did throughout my routine of not only spring training games, but also any type of night games that we would have during the season. Right after the game, right after our games were televised and uploaded to the apps and everything, we were able to watch our at-bats and watch what we were able to do on the field for that given day. So this is ultimately immediate feedback that we're constantly using to better ourselves. Let's talk about travel days. And this is going to be the time where it's very stressful, especially in spring training. But during the season, it's a little bit different. So like pro baseball, it's just not about playing at home. I think you guys already understand that. And we're constantly on the move. We're traveling from city to cities for games. And travel days start usually super early. And this is, maybe 10 a.m. for a spring training game or even earlier in the season because obviously travel plans, early flights, whatnot. So it's usually straight to the hotel or to the airport from the airport. And we'll catch a flight to the next city, and it's just a lot of moving pieces. You have to be in order. You have to be have an understanding of how to actually pack your bags because sometimes they'll be done for you, sometimes not. You are the person that's responsible of your stuff, your equipment, sometimes your travel bags, your personal bags, your toiletry bags, all that type of stuff. So it can be tough also on the body. That's the part that it's very easy to get dehydrated when you're traveling. It's important to eat well and then also use any downtime to ultimately rest. And once we land, sometimes we go straight to the hotel or sometimes we'll go straight to the ballpark, just depending on, the time of the day, the time of the game, things like that. So then it's back into game mode, really. Even on travel days, there's really no time off. And, every game is crucial and we have to be ready to perform no matter what. We can't be giving ourselves excuses and they don't have a weight room and they don't have this and they don't have that like we do at home. We need to get out of that mindset, right? So the evening routine and the recovery. So after that long day, whether it's a game during the day or if it's a travel day, it's all about recovery, guys. And my evening routine depends on if it's in season or spring training, really. And focusing on getting my body ready for that next day. And it includes a healthy dinner, if I was able to, make one, or if the team provided a good spread. Something in, again, high in protein, carbs to help with recovery. And this is a time for me to be able to relax my muscles. Sometimes I would use foam rollers to, massage myself out. Massaging tools like the ray gun or whatever it's called. That's an easy way to make sure our muscles are recovering in the best way possible, right? Sleep is also very, very crucial in the season, especially. It's very, very tough to wind down. So I try to do it as early as possible. And with the adrenaline of the game, this is why it's really hard to wind down. So I would try to immediately hit the pillow once I got back home, lay down, and basically tell my body, like, hey, let's start trying to go to bed. It didn't always happen immediately, but, that adrenaline would, last in me for a while. So I didn't always typically go to sleep super early, and this is during the season. And if you think about it, we're playing games around 7 o'clock at night, and that's the start time. Let's say it's a 3-hour game. That's 8, 9, 10 o'clock. We're getting done. Eat, shower, change, commute to wherever our apartment is or wherever we're living. We might be getting back at 11:30-ish every single day. And then, of course, we still have that adrenaline. Maybe it's a close game in the ninth inning and a very, very important at-bat, and you're up to the plate. You're going to be super laser focused, right? You can't really just, throw that adrenaline out the window and say, okay, let's go to sleep, right? So this is the hard part of being a pro athlete is sometimes we're going to sleep at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm always trying to tell my body, hey, it's time to go to sleep. And, Of course, I would get my 8 hours, but I would also be sleeping in to most people's standards. But in reality, I'm getting those 8 hours. I'm waking up maybe 10 to 11:30 in the morning, still getting those 8 hours. So, but when you get into that high intensity moment, like I said, like it's very, very hard to cool down. And getting that night's rest is key to performing well the next day and ultimately the day out, for throughout the season. So I always make that a priority. And if we're in the middle of the season, I always make sure to sleep in, like I just said, shooting for those 8 hours. And it's a lot of hard work, and it's also incredibly rewarding. And every day is about pushing yourself to be better and staying focused, guys, and doing whatever it takes to compete at the highest level. And so if you found this video helpful, and if you've made it this far and you are serious about taking your game to the next level, this is just the tip of the iceberg of what I teach my students inside my academy all about. So if you're a high school baseball player who is an uncommitted rising junior or senior who wants to develop even quicker, I have some instructions for you right now. Go ahead, in the description, you should be able to find a link to go over to my website, Mendoza Baseball Academy, and you can apply to work together, all right? I always like to say, do today what others won't, so tomorrow you can do what others can't. So again, if you're a varsity high school baseball player aiming for a D1 scholarship here in the near future, let me help you prepare you by getting you on that path inside my program. So guys, go down below in the description. You should also find a video about the triple play. You can learn a lot more about my program in that video.